Is YouTube being co-opted by government agencies like the CIA? Say it ain't so, TYT, say it ain't so. Let's talk about it, y'all. Middle America.
And you ain't black.
The first time ever any...
What are you people? We're Americans. We are Americans indeed. My name is Vincent, and this is Middle America. We are not left-wing, we are not right-wing, we're just right. That's the tagline. Most of the time we're wrong. Shout out to BC. Most of the time we're wrong. But that's because my partner in crime is not here. She's let's say she's below the weather, and we've got some family issues that we gotta, extended family issues that need to be worked out. So let's do it that way. But never fear. Things will turn out fine, I'm sure. Let me know, guys, about the volume. If the volume is right, you can check us out at facebook.com/America Middle. It's a free speech environment, so it can get a little crazy over there. But hopefully, people get what we're trying to do over there. Look, guys, not a lot of political sophistication here. A lot of the reasons why I actually shoot these videos is not so much to tell you guys what to think, but moreover to basically report that what we're all hearing and collectively come to a conclusion. Hopefully you guys can help me come to a conclusion on a thing, because at this point we have I think all of us lack trust in the mainstream media and our institutions for obvious reasons. And a lot of people have been saying, well, I mean, you got to believe somebody. And a lot of people have been using this to justify censorship and things of that nature. I think really for me, the show has evolved to me, this is the solution to the censorship. How do you overcome disinformation and misinformation and all the rest of it? Is not for YouTube and the government to censor certain people and say, no, this is right, this is right. What I would think is we take all the pieces of data, all the information together. We know this group has an agenda. We know that group has an agenda. We know that something is probably true in the middle. And I think when all of us get together, look at all the puzzle pieces on the table, that all of us have a much better job of influencing one another to get closer to the actual truth than our overlords in YouTube and all the rest of it. So that's kind of the point of Middle America as it stands now. I mean, initially it was, we're going to try to take a sort of a sane middle position on any given topic, but the news itself has become the ultimate topic. And then who gets to curate what information, and how do we know it's true? And we all know for the last 4 or 5 years now how information can be weaponized by malevolent and benevolent people who think they're benevolent, but then weaponize information for good causes, or stifle opposing views for good reasons. I think all of that is massively dangerous to a democratic environment. And for me, no. If it's between the CDC and Joe down the street with his tinfoil hat, then of course not. But if I bring all of us into one room, and one person says, I get what the CDC is saying, but here's what a whole other body of qualified medical associates who are experts in this field say here, then I feel like we're in a much safer place than to let 9 people from CNN, MSNBC, YouTube, Twitter, and TikTok dictate to us what the actual facts are, okay? So that is pretty much the point of the channel at this point. I basically had an epiphany where I basically said, okay, this is why I'm doing the channel right now. I can't believe anything I see in the mainstream media, and we're about to see that we can't even believe anything that we see in tube stream media. So I think the best, the Bible says in a multitude of counselors there's wisdom. And so you guys have been, especially through COVID, Russiagate, et cetera, there have been a couple of you who have been completely on the other side of a given issue with me, and have been able to convince me through a multitude of articles and and just the running discussion we all have together. And so that's essentially where I'm at right now. Okay, there's your program thing. I'll probably shoot a commercial or something. But anyway, having said that, Jimmy Dore had this dude on Maupin yesterday, and we're just gonna watch this video together, dear listener, and let's figure out what he's saying, because somebody was telling me you gotta watch this video. It's a groundbreaking video. It's gonna change the way you look at YouTube. Yada yada yada. I doubt very highly it's gonna change the way that I look at all of YouTube, just because I never really had any other sort of idea that YouTube was like a pure platform, especially after everything that we've seen. But I'm willing to give it a shot. So without further ado, dear listener, here we go. Jimmy Dore, left-wing YouTubers co-opted by the security state is what it's called. Let's check it out, shall we?
I'm here with Caleb Maupin. He's a widely acclaimed speaker, writer, journalist, and political analyst. He has traveled extensively in the Middle East and Latin America. He was involved with the Occupy Wall Street movement from its early planning stages, and has been involved in many struggles for social justice. He is an outspoken advocate of international friendship and cooperation, as well as a 21st century socialism. Please welcome Caleb Maupin. Thanks for being here, Caleb.
Sure.
Now I want to talk about your book here. Here's your book, BreadTube Serves Imperialism. Explain. Now, I don't know most of the people in this book. I thought I was going to know everybody.
Finn, did you watch Sean's video on Jimmy Dore? He got caught blatantly fudging COVID info. No, I don't know who Sean is. Send me the link, and I'll try to look at it. I'm assuming that we're not going to be talking about COVID. When I say we, I'm not talking about Middle America. I'm talking about the national discussion, because right now we're supposed to be outraged about Will Smith, and we're still taking sides in the very simplistic war between Ukraine and Russia. But I'd like to check it out. I mean, my take on COVID was to go with my thing was always follow the science, and because I'm pro-life, I wanted to err, and I don't think I would have taken a much different position. Obviously, for me, the CDC, jihad, where they were talking about information not being ready for prime time and how the CDC held back on certain pieces of information on purpose, was way more egregious than anything a YouTuber can do. But definitely, I would definitely like to see that for sure. Jimmy issued a correction video and said it was his producer that fucked up. JD took accountability for it. Okay. All right. Well, there's that. But I'd still like to look at it. I mean, if we're talking about it, if I had to do COVID reporting again, I probably would have given a lot more time to the Malone guy and the other guy that what's his face was talking to, Joe Rogan. Those 6-hour interviews between those two guys, I probably would have given him a lot more time. But yeah, the New York Times report, I put bombshell in the ticker on the for the title, where the New York Times specifically held back on information because they thought we were not ready for prime time. I mean, that was massive to me. That was massive, paradigm shifting, disillusionment, call it whatever you want to call it. But at that point, that was probably, I was thinking about this yesterday. That, among other things, was a major turning point for this channel, for me, when I was like, you know what, I've got to really rethink my epistemology, like, my theory on knowledge. How do you know what's true, what's not, et cetera, et cetera. And I've taken a kind of a mixed view. For example, I will probably do a video on the Ukrainians and how they were treating POWs, et cetera, et cetera. But we're going on rabbit holes here. So let's go right to this discussion. This is Mr. Maupin, obviously a socialist. Let's see what he has to say, shall we?
I don't know any of them. So tell people what BreadTube is, and then tell people how they serve imperialism.
Well, I got kind of sucked in. I was asked to debate somebody, and so somebody wanted to debate me about socialism. So I debated this character, Destiny Stephen Bennell, and we had quite an interesting debate about socialism.
Now, for some of you guys who are really big on the culture, is this a Destiny that I hear everybody talking about? He's a debater. People say, hey, you should debate Destiny on abortion, blah, blah, blah. Is that the Destiny that he's talking about here? We continue. He was invited to do a debate on socialism or whatever with this guy, Destiny. We continue.
And it was very odd. And so then from there, I was sucked into this internet subculture, this internet universe that presents itself as left-wing, that presents itself as socialist or Marxist or anarchist, but is really just a way to rile up young people who...
I'd say that I am Marx sympathetic. Actually, one of the big revelations I've got since starting these channels is from Marxists. And I said, that's Marxism. And I was like, this is crazy. What you're talking about is Marxism. And then I had a guy tell me, well, how much Marx have you actually read? And I had read none. And so I had to shut the hell up and start reading some Marx. And then when I started reading some Marx and then looking at some history and things of that nature, and I saw that pretty much every civil rights leader was friendly to Marx and used Marx for inspiration, I had to augment my view on Marx. Which again is one of the reasons that channels like this is so important. But right now, what he's saying is that left wing YouTube is there, and they're Marxist to appeal to young people, I guess.
Associate with progressive causes, anti-racism, workers' rights, and get them supporting the U.S. political establishment against the right wing. And so the more I kind of observed this internet subculture, and these people are getting hundreds of thousands, millions of views. They're being promoted by the New Yorker magazine, and they're speaking in the name of Marxism and socialism and leftism. But the essence of what they say is that the United States and U.S. imperialism, they are the good guys against, these authoritarian regimes around the world. They're spreading freedom. They say that socialism is just an employee stock ownership program. They don't question the rule of profits. They just want to kind of experiment with worker cooperatives, basically. And it's pretty clear that they are getting propped up by one wing of the establishment. Now, in the book, I go into the evidence.
Okay, that says to me, they're calling themselves Marxist, but that says to me that they're more like me. In other words, I'm a stickler for trying to be as accurate about myself as possible. So I say that I'm Marx sympathetic, maybe Marx adjacent. I've only read a couple books, I'm sludging through Das, and then obviously Workers of the World Unite. So I can't say that I'm a full-blooded Marxist and I know the ins and outs of the economic theory. But right now, his criticism, while probably valid for a guy like him who's probably well-versed in Marxism, et cetera, I'm not necessarily sure that there's an actual criticism here where I say these guys are, in cahoots with the government. I think a lot of these young folks are barely informed, but they're at the end of the day, they would not say this, but they're still patriotic Americans. I think Americans, and unless you're in this country, you really can't understand it. Americans just have an assumption of benevolence when they're operating in the world. You see a lot of this in the Russia-Ukraine debacle, where the United States has done in the past and continues to do right now, actions and even verbiage that has been stoking this war and has generated this war. And even, quote, left wing, and I don't really know what that means anymore, or right wing. I don't know what any of this means anymore. And that may be a good or bad thing. But you see this assumption of American benevolence, and that America is a good guy in this situation. And there's almost a blindness to things that would seem obvious if you were on another team, if that makes any sense. I'm not sure. And yes, I think agency elements in our government can take advantage of that sort of the dichotomy between being a Marxist to whatever degree you are and still being a patriot. I think our government could take advantage of that ignorance and naivete, but that doesn't necessarily mean that folks are explicitly, self-consciously working for the government, if that makes any sense. Okay. That's where I'm at with that particular criticism on his part.
Of that. But then we have further evidence of that thanks to the work of Max Blumenthal and the Grayzone. We now know that one of these voices, Abigail Thorne, was directly being subsidized by the British government, by foundations tied to USAID and to the British royal family and such. So, what I said in the book, based on estimates, right, based on some of the people in the background advising them that I heard about and other things, has now been pretty well confirmed. These folks are basically some kind of psyop to get young.
Okay. So Abigail Thorne, I guess, is a YouTuber, and I guess they got okay. Here we go, guys. So this is what he's talking about. And look, I do this stuff real time, y'all. Your brother Vincent is multi-talented. Okay, so here's the Grayzone. Leaked files expose serious psyops veteran astroturfing BreadTube star to counter COVID restriction critics. Okay. All right. So here is the Max Blumenthal, the Grayzone article that he was talking about. So there's the former I think that's the British royal family, and then that's this lady. So apparently she took money by covertly recruiting popular YouTube influencer Abigail Thorne to counter growing opposition to UK government COVID restrictions. PsyOps pros are bringing home the tactics they honed in the Syrian dirty war. Leaked documents have revealed a state-sponsored influence operation designed to undermine critics of British government's coronavirus policies by astroturfing a prominent founder of the BreadTube clique of anti-fascist YouTube influence. The project aims to conduct a psychological profiling. Okay, guys, we're gonna check. I'm gonna put this on the screen for you so you can read along with me. Let me go here. Let me put this here so that can be there. And let's see if we can't. Here we go. The project aims to conduct psychological profiling on British citizens dissenting against policies such as mandatory vaccination and lockdowns, and leveraging the data to establish a YouTube channel that portrays these critics as dangerous super spreaders of disinformation. Wow. Leaked files obtained by the Grayzone indicate that the Royal Institution has enlisted the services of Valent Projects, a social change communications firm, etc., and they had phases, etc., and then they went after this lady, Miss Thorne, boasting over 1 million subscribers to her YouTube channel. Congratulations to her. And more than 7,000 Patreon supporters. Subhanallah. Yikes. Thorne established a potent vehicle for any communication. Hey, you can check us out, VIN and SORI at Patreon if you'd like, $1. She's also a core member of BreadTube, an assortment of left-branded social media influencers that has attracted intense establishment interest for its purported ability to pop YouTube's political bubbles to create spaces for de-radicalization. While top BreadTubers are known for employing memes and theatrical ploys to counter right-wing narratives, they have also dedicated intense energy to attacking the anti-imperialist left as tankies engaged in a secret red-brown alliance with right-wing extremists. This almost is like, I hate to say this, but that's like, I feel like that's exactly the playbook that's been used against Jimmy Dore, where Jimmy Dore is somehow a bad person because he takes right-leaning folks like me and converts them into stark raving mad, activists for Medicare for all and all the rest of it. But if there was no bridge like a Jimmy Dore, Bernie Sanders was kind of like this as well. If there was no bridge, I would have never given Jimmy Medicare for all the time of day. At the time, it was Bernie Sanders. He was uniting folks from the left and the right. Bernie would not demonize people on the quote right. He would talk to anybody. And then Jimmy, he'll talk to Tucker, he'll talk to other people, and Jimmy is kind of like the gateway drug to some form of Marxism to a degree. But the people that attack Jimmy the most are people like TYT and all the rest of it. So I don't know. That's very, very, very fascinating. Very, very fascinating. Okay, so that's one situation. That is one situation in which it's obvious that a BreadTuber or a left-wing, I'd call her a neoliberal probably, YouTuber who fits this profile, who is they're left-wing, but they're still kind of in with the general government or in with the general popular narrative, not populist narrative, but popular narrative, was then deployed by intelligence agencies, et cetera, to use their platform to influence people within the direction of the government. Because again, they consider themselves left-wing. They've read a little bit of Marx, but they don't have, I don't think, the experience or sophistication yet. People are going to get offended. There's nothing I could do about it. But it appears they don't yet have the sophistication to be able to critique their own government to the point where they don't just assume that their government is benevolent. So when they get reached out to by the CIA, they hop right on. Now, we saw this already. We saw this already with the TikTokers, where our government, Jen Psaki and then National Security Council guy, I mean, these guys explicitly went to these young TikTokers to basically go back to their audience and re-educate the unwashed masses on this stuff. So there you go. So now Gabe says, is this a conspiracy channel now? It depends on what you call conspiracy, Gabe. If they told us that Hunter Biden, and you had 50 members of the intelligence community, 50 members of the intelligence community told us that the Hunter Biden thing was fake and it was Russian propaganda. And then Twitter worked to censor the New York Post. And then we found out, oops, actually, it's not propaganda. It's 100% real. The laptop thing is 100% real. I don't have to talk about COVID and what the CDC had to admit to the New York Times, what they did, et cetera, et cetera. So if that makes this a conspiracy channel, then fine. I just think when you have multiple examples of your government lying to you, your government pushing a certain agenda on you, and your government trying to get you to have a restricted flow of information, I think you have to start questioning it, right? That's where I'm from. But these people, not so much. Rig says, She's got 296 videos. One was about vaccines, but she's a shill. Well, I don't know. I don't really think that the amount of videos she produces is pertinent when you have 1 million subscribers. I know a little bit about how the YouTube game works. You don't have to put out a lot of videos, especially if you're triangulating with YouTube themselves. If YouTube page one's what you're saying and you have 1 million subscribers, your one video can be more impactful than literally 10,000 creators making 10 videos. Right? So, whether or not she's a quote shill, I don't think is really the issue. For me, the issue is, did funds exchange hands, or did elements of her government try to influence her, and it appears successfully, to shoot that one video when you've got 1 million viewers and 7,000 patrons? That's a highly influential young lady with a very loyal fan base. And so for her to produce one video is all that is necessary, actually. So I'm trying to get away from using terminology like shill, right? Because I understand, whatever. And just try to go with what the actual data is. The data says that she was recruited by our government to push out a certain type of narrative. That's the problem. That's the problem for me. Okay. Okay. So Christopher's saying something was debunked, but I don't know what he's saying is debunked. I hope he's not saying that the Hunter laptop thing was debunked, because unless you mean that the 50 CIA officers who said it was all Russian propaganda, that I agree was debunked. I don't know if that's what you meant. But yeah, I mean, our government obviously explicitly lied to us about the Hunter laptop issue. Clearly, that was an obvious lie that they knew was a lie, and our social media overlords went along with it. That's just one example. We continue.
I'm here with Caleb Maupin. He's a widely acclaimed speaker, writer, journalist, and political analyst. He has traveled extensively in the Middle East and Latin America. He was involved with the Occupy Wall Street movement from its early planning stages and has been involved in many struggles for social justice. He is an outspoken advocate of
Jimmy
international...
here and go back here.
Basically. It's pretty clear that they are getting propped up by one wing of the establishment. Now, in the book, I go into the evidence of that. But then we have further evidence of that thanks to the work of Max Blumenthal and the Grayzone. We now know that one of these voices, Abigail Thorne, was directly being subsidized by the British government, by foundations tied to USAID and to the British royal family and such. So, what I said in the book, based on estimates, right, based on some of the people in the background advising them that I heard about and other things, has now been pretty well confirmed. These folks are basically some kind of psyop to get young people that have socialistic or anti-imperialist instincts and get them to serve the empire.
So you're saying there's evidence to back this up, that there are YouTubers in the political lefty space, and a lot of them. You're saying a lot. Not
okay. So he's saying estimates. He's using the term like estimates, but like where is the hard evidence, right? So the Max Blumenthal article, okay, that's somebody over in the UK. Again, is it crazy? No, because as I said, you saw what happened with the TikTokers. I'm cool. When I hear estimates, though, I start getting a little nerve. What do you mean by estimates? Like, where is the hard evidence? Is there a whistleblower? Is there a leak somewhere? Where are you getting this?
But a lot of them, and they're called BreadTube, and you're saying that those people are somehow being co-opted by the intelligence communities to push an agenda?
Sure. I mean, I received quite a bit of information about who was advising them. There's an individual who's tied to military psychiatrists who appeared on CNN calling for mass deprogramming of the country after January 6th. And there are other things that point to some kind of covert support, the mainstream media highlighting some of these people and celebrating them. And then their foreign policy stances could come directly from CNN. And then we have that great report that was done by the Grayzone, and that all points to this. But the thing is, there's a precedent for this, right?
Okay, I'm trying to work with you, bro. None of that is proof. So what he's saying is, agency guy gets on TV, talks about a mass deprogramming that needs to happen. And then he says that these BreadTubers, it just seems to me to be neoliberal TYT type folks who are saying the exact same thing as the CIA and then the exact same thing as CNN. Now, listen, I have no problem saying it. And we talked about this when The View, the ladies on The View were talking about how Tucker Carlson and Tulsi Gabbard needed to be locked away, right? Remember we talked about that? They needed to be locked away, and we were talking about bringing back McCarthyism, and I highlighted specific moments where it appeared that they were literally reading from a script. And so I have no problem saying I believe that segment could have been written by an agency person who just gave this. Do I believe that's what happened? Yes, I do. It doesn't have to be the agency. It could be any group. It could be Jen Psaki have written that for whatever reason. But it appeared to me she was reading a prepared script about this and etc. Now, that is what that is. But that's my speculation. You can't definitively say all these people are working for the agency because they're parroting agency talking points. One of the things that they teach you is when you talk about an agent of the CIA, you're not talking about the person who works directly in the CIA. The person who, you call him a case officer or field officer, blah, 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 right? Case officer, field officer, that's what you call them. The person that you turn is the agent. So the person that you turn and convince to go to your cause and betray their country or whatever, that person is what an agent actually is. The field officer, the case officer or whatever is the person that actually directly works for the CIA. Here's my point. It may very well be sometimes a case officer is so good that he or she is able to turn the agent into such a true believer that they don't need any direction. Does that make any sense? So to me, it's very simple to just simply say, no, these people have become completely propagandized and brainwashed by mainstream media. And then what ends up happening is on YouTube and things of that nature, YouTube, unless you're actively working to promote dissent of your primary thesis, you're going to attract people who function in a sort of echo chamber for you and reaffirm you. And so you're getting affirmation from your peers and affirmation from the adults, because they're still young people, and young people generally, if they're not very accomplished, still want affirmation from the adults. And on top of that, you're getting monetary compensation. You're getting a lot of really good monetary compensation for it. I am not seeing how my brother, Mr. Maupin, has any proof that the agency is directly involved in turning these people. It could just very well be that these are all sort of not useful idiots, but people who've already been completely propagandized and brainwashed by mainstream media, and then they're getting monetary compensation and fame for it. And so you don't need to approach them directly to do anything. Holy shit. Bruce Arians moving to the front office in Tampa Bay. Todd Bowles is the new head coach. Holy shite. Okay, we continue. According to Wheeze. Wheeze says we continue, so we continue. Let's go.
We often talk about the Congress for Cultural Freedom program, which was in the 1950s. The CIA realized that basically, if they wanted to hurt the left and hurt Marxists, one way to do it was to start funding certain voices. And you had the CIA set up Partisan Review magazine. You had the CIA basically launch a whole program to subsidize left-wing voices that were anti-communist, that were against the Soviet Union, that were against China. And there's a long history of covert manipulation of left-wing.
There is. It happened a lot in the civil rights movement. You go check out COINTELPRO. One of Martin Luther King Jr.'s most verbose critics was a black preacher who would protest outside of his hotels and preach sermons against Dr. King and yada yada yada. And that guy was literally directly working with the Central Intelligence Agency. That's a fact. That's a fact. So go check out COINTELPRO. The CIA has a long history of doing this. The CIA, guys, look, this is why I say, like, be careful when you just dismiss something as a conspiracy theory. Here's the LA Times recently. The CIA has had a long special relationship with the entertainment industry, devoting considerable attention to fostering relationships with Hollywood movers and shakers, studio executives, producers, directors, big name actors. John Rizzo, the former acting CIA general counsel, wrote in his new book, Company Man, 30 Years of Crisis and Controversy in the CIA. So that's a guy, a former spook from the agency, that says they've had a long special relationship with the entertainment industry. They've devoted considerable time, okay, to this. People might assume that since Hollywood leans to the political left, the CIA's relationships would be with the sort of conservative picket of Hollywood, Rizzo said in an interview. Well, that's not true. People one would normally associate with liberal causes have assisted the CIA. Rizzo is prohibited from naming names, etc., etc., etc. Okay, so right there, John Rizzo from the LA Times admits that the CIA has done this in the entertainment field since the beginning of Hollywood. I think it's 1947. Since the inception, the intelligence has been working with Hollywood, and where it buttresses Mr. Maupin's point is specifically folks on the left. They said you would assume that they would be going after folks on the right because right-wingers are generally more amenable to the government, but actually their target has been folks on the left, which makes a bunch of sense. If they're on the right, then the people that are attracted to those actors are already probably influenced by the government to the point where the government is satisfied. But you want to go after folks on the left because right-wing folks are trying to conserve what's already there. It's left-wing folks who are trying to change something or mess something up. And so you want to go after people who represent the change agent, get them to assimilate while still pretending they're a change agent. That's brilliant. Makes a lot of sense. We continue. But that as a true principle does not give us the hard and fast proof that what he's saying is true. Okay, so you gotta think that through. Yeah, Sadie, none of it is new other than the YouTube aspect of it, because YouTube is a different form of media. Furthermore, I don't think we should ever be desensitized to the fact that our government is actively working to psychologically manipulate us. And the other thing is, if we know that our government is actively working to psychologically manipulate us, which psychological operations are technically an act of war, then that makes it so that what we are watching and what we believe about domestic and world events should always have an asterisk to it. But anybody who questions the narrative is marginalized as some crazy, kooky conspiracy theorists, etc., etc. That's why these things are important. We continue.
voices, kind of presenting left-wing voices that are, in a way, acceptable to the establishment. And it was actually Irving Kristol, who was the director of the Congress for Cultural Freedom program for the CIA. He eventually became considered the ideological father of neoconservatism. But a lot of big names that one associates with the left, like Mary McCarthy, Hannah Arendt, Susan Sontag, they got their start with this CIA-funded publication. So there's a precedent for this kind of behavior. And during the Cold War...
I agree, but that precedent and proof are not the same thing. We continue.
This was done, yes.
So this isn't new. In fact, so this isn't new that the CIA, the intelligence communities, that they co-opt media and they fund media directly a lot of times and to push an agenda, imperialistic, hegemonic agenda. This is not new. This isn't a crazy conspiracy theory. This has been documented. The Church Committee, that was in the 70s. And can you talk about that?
Sure, yeah. I mean, it became revealed in the 1970s with the Church Committee. That was during the presidency of Jimmy Carter. You had a congressional committee that investigated the FBI and CIA, and they revealed a number of things, including Project Mockingbird, which was, the CIA's wing that was handling the media, as well as Project MKUltra, which was about promoting hallucinogens and drugs on college campuses and into left-wing and radical spaces, and that there was all kinds of foul play. And again, this is documented. Yeah, I mean, these are facts. These are historical facts. There are mainstream media articles about it. There are whole academic books that have been published about this kind of thing. And it's so sad that they've cultivated this atmosphere where if anyone says anything like this, they just go, "Oh, that's a conspiracy theory. That's a conspiracy." No, these are things that are acknowledged from the history.
I agree. I don't think I don't think this is a conspiracy theory at all. I think these are, these are acknowledged. My only thing is, it's a non sequitur to say that because this has happened in the past and because this happened over in the UK, that it's happening currently now, and this is the explanation for TYT and Vosh and Destiny and all the rest of these folks. I don't think one necessarily follows the other. We continue.
Based on these historical precedents of manipulating activists, manipulating left-wing voices, based on some of the people associated with BreadTube, and now based on that smoking gun we got from Grayzone, it's pretty clear what BreadTube is. It's an attempt to control the narrative and make sure that people who are interested in socialism and workers' rights and opposing the police state, that they, follow a certain foreign policy agenda. And there's nothing particularly scandalous about this.
I agree. But I don't think it's because the agency is going out and secretly recruiting these people. I think it's the agency and other elements who are taking advantage of a good situation that they created. I mean, look, there are multiple ways to skin a cat. These are very, 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 very intelligent people, very extremely brilliant people. There's lots of ways to skin a cat, and look, the other part of me that doesn't believe what he's saying is, it seems to me what he's saying is that agencies directly going to these folks, directly recruiting them, directly having them do X, Y, and Z thing for them, and then remunerating them. And what I'm saying is that our government, in concert with our media, created an environment where something like this would be inevitable. And so you don't have to directly go to influence a secret cabal of left-wing YouTubers who are going to do your bidding. You don't have to do that because you've created such an environment already where it almost creates the situations where YouTubers like that would be inevitable. So, and the YouTube algorithm is massively powerful. They can raise up anyone they want, and they can take down anybody that they want. So, anybody that's ever done anything significant on YouTube knows that. I remember when I talked about YouTube throttling people a couple of years ago, some very adept Silicon Valley people were, no, that's not what they're doing. That's not what they're doing. Yada yada yada. And of course, YouTube came out and said a couple years later that's what they're doing, and they're bragging about it. That's my thing, is they're bragging about this stuff. They, in broad daylight, did the TikTok recruitment thing. They did that in broad daylight in front of all of us. So I don't see why, if this really happened, where these people were actually approached, and they're this guy's saying that they're actually complicit with this stuff, then I feel like our government would be explicit. They probably shoot a commercial with all these people. These people have so little respect for us now that they did the TikTok thing in broad daylight. So I don't really know. I don't really know. Okay. Oh yeah, you definitely should be a mod. Okay, we continue.
We should almost expect this kind of behavior at the end of the day, right? I mean, this is how they work. They try to craft discourse in their own way. What's interesting is that the primary activities of the BreadTube crowd seem to be about getting left-wing voices to kind of, participate in this partisan red state versus blue state fight. And you, Jimmy, have been targeted ridiculously because, oh my goodness, you interviewed somebody from the Bugaloo Boys. Oh my gosh, right?
Oh yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that. This hardcore bipartisan, TYT does it the most, where it's like this like resentment for anything Republican. Republicans are morally bad. If you're a Republican, you're just morally a bad person. Where they try to shame and excise people from the community. And when you do that, you're playing right into the government's hands, because then you can demonize a whole group of people. You can call them deplorables, and then you can scare the hell out of the few people that are left in your little circle. And then that's where the whole blue no matter who comes in and all the rest of it. So when you do that and you demonize all Republicans, or you demonize Boogaloo Boys or anybody, you're going to create a fracture that always benefits the establishment. Because I'll tell you something, the establishment doesn't give a damn. As I keep telling you, from Bush 2 to Obama to Trump to Biden, those guys handed the ball off to each other of empirical aspirations all over the world. They handed that baton. The bombing baton was handed from Cheney to Obama, and he ran with that shit. The kids in cages was handed from Obama to Trump to Biden. And my point is, the elites, I don't believe they like each other, but they know that they're on the same team. So Nancy Pelosi, while calling Trump a psychopath and crazy and all the rest of it, also cast a vote to give Trump billions and billions and billions of dollars for the, quote, defense budget. So these people do not like, I genuinely believe they genuinely dislike each other, but they know that they're on the same team. What happens when you go downstream of that is that you get elements like TYT and these other people who completely alienate a person like me, who would say, yeah, I'm staunchly pro-life. I'm almost a one-issue voter. But if you could frame Medicare for all in a pro-life context, then I might give you a listen. If you could frame our foreign policy in a pro-life context, I'd give it a listen. If you could frame immigration in a pro-life context, I'd give it a listen. Now, Jimmy's very caustic, and he'll say, you're a hypocrite and blah, 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 blah. But at the same time, he'll still extend an olive branch and treat you like a human being and not completely call you a deplorable and all the rest of it. And now you got a person like me and Sori who we're kind of confused, don't really know what the hell we're doing, but we know we're not going to vote Republican, because we don't really believe they're pro-life. And that's largely because of people on the left like Jimmy Dore and Bernie Sanders and you people. So I agree. When you do that, you're playing into the hands of the government. I mean, I will talk to anybody and I will ally with anybody. I don't care if you're a raging, KKK lover, whatever. It's one of the reasons that I didn't really do a lot of talking during the Kyle Rittenhouse situation. because there are a lot of things at play that I thought that people were just completely missing out on. And one of them was the fact that, okay, if Mr. Rittenhouse can do that and claim self-defense, and there's a bunch of self-defense black cases that we can use. And Kyle Rittenhouse had said, he said on Tucker's show, he said, imagine if it was me, a person of color without resources, what would have happened? And instead of us, I'm speaking specifically of people of color, instead of us jumping on that and saying, holy shit, let's get Rittenhouse to use our talking points. Let's recruit him. This is 101 in the agency. Oh, this guy is feeling a little bit disillusioned by his society. The society that he thought was built for him kind of turned on him a little bit. Perfect candidate to be turned into an agent. Instead of us turning this kid and using him for our benefit, LeBron and the rest of those folks decided to beat the hell out of him on Twitter, say a bunch of crazy shit because we're not thinking. So the people that hate us benefited from us hating Kyle Rittenhouse. But we were so emotional, we couldn't figure it out. This man went on Tucker Carlson and said if he was a person of color without resources, he'd have been in a lot of trouble in the legal system. So, and then you think to yourself, man, maybe in his time in jail or whatnot, or in a legal process, that he made friends with the black guy, yada, yada, yada. We have no idea how we could have exploited. I'm just using the term exploit in the technical sense. How we could have exploited that entire situation in the cause of justice. But because we're so bifurcated and he's a privileged white male, we were actually unable to take advantage of something that in my mind was a 5-mile-an-hour fastball right down the middle of the plate that we could have used for our advantage, but we didn't because we were so caught up in this narrative. And so we can't think critically. But I'll tell you, so I'm willing to work with anybody and everybody for the cause of justice. I'm working right now in my state with some very non-pro-life people, but they're working on getting housing for everybody. We've got a heavy immigrant population here. We've got an LGBT population here that's in a lot of trouble, drugs, street stuff, all the rest of it. Maine is still kind of conservative, so we're working on trying to get housing and healthcare for everybody. These people are not with me on the very serious topic of abortion, but because I still see the housing for immigrants and LGBT kids, particularly as a life issue, because it is. When you don't have housing in this particular state, in this particular area, you end up in the streets and you end up with fentanyl in your veins and you die. So we've got people dying in inordinate amounts from those demographics. So it's a pro-life issue to me. So I'm working with those folks. I'm willing to work with anybody as long as I have my true north. Now, am I going to go to a pro-choice rally? No, I will be on the other side of that. But there are other issues where I can team up with you. So my point is this is a pretty long point, but the point is this thing where you demonize millions of people cuts you off at the knees and works it works for the government. It works for it benefits the government. This bifurcation, the tribalism, the demonization of everybody works for the government. It does not work for our interests. It's one of the reasons why I'll have a primary thesis on my channel. Somebody asked me, one of my friends asked me, how do you get pinned? Usually I will pin somebody who has an articulate, well-reasoned, and conciliatory attitude who goes against my primary thesis. And the reason I do that is because I want to show, here's the other side. Look, they're not demons. They're reasonable people. Let's discuss and get to the point. Okay, that was a very, 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 very long point, but there we go.
This cancel culture, never talk to any Trump supporter, never talk to anyone on the right. This is a big part of this because they don't want an actual movement of the people from below where you have people with different perspectives and different ideologies, different religious backgrounds. They don't want that. What they want is an army of foot soldiers to do the work of Joe Biden and protect Joe Biden from the Republicans. And if you can just, cancel anyone who's deemed quote unquote right wing, you can isolate people and make them loyal foot soldiers of one section of the ruling class.
There you go. Okay, I agree with him there.
So they did come back. So that's the biggest thing that they seem to want to shut down, is if meeting the establishment and the intelligence community, if somebody from the left and the right figure out that they have common enemies that they can work together against, that's what they have to demonize, like they did to me when I interviewed that Boogaloo Boy, which, by the way, people still don't realize it. Boogaloo Boy, 100% different than Proud Boys. Boogaloo Boys are the antidote to Proud Boys. Boogaloo Boys are anti-imperialism, anti-cop, anti-Trump, anti-racist, and pro-LGBTQ and pro-Black Lives Matter. That's what Boogaloo Boys are. But the BreadTube people wanted to manipulate that and distort that into Boogaloo Boys are right-wing racists just like Trump and Proud Boys and Nazis. That's what they wanted people to think, and it's the exact opposite. And that's why I trended on Twitter for 3 days straight one time, was because they have all their bots and everything coming out to try to create a false narrative that Jimmy Dore's working with Nazis, instead of Jimmy Dore is reaching out to working class libertarians who share a lot of the same goals of people on the progressive left, and we share a common enemy. And so they had to try to distort it. It's not. It works on some people. It certainly isn't helpful, but it's to a point where when people attack me that way, it actually does help me now, because now they see the people who are doing those attacks, and we've explained to them who they are, except I didn't know who these people are. Who are the people who are on BreadTube? You mentioned someone named Destiny. I don't know who that is. Who else? But these are popular people.
Sure. Well, this Destiny character, who I guess, he's kind of the kingmaker of BreadTube, if not part of BreadTube himself, right?
Really?
He's a guy from Nebraska who worked at a carpet cleaning company, but figured out a way to start playing video games on the internet full time. And he became kind of famous for playing a video game on the internet, and that was his life. And then randomly, around the time Trump got elected, he suddenly started debating right-wingers. And he was kind of a right-winger himself. He was a libertarian or something. But then he started debating right-wingers, and mainstream media outlets were like heralding him as, this famous internet troll is going to debate the right wing and debate Trump supporters. And he was getting a lot of play that way. And it seemed like that was his new gig, was debating folks. There's this character, I almost don't want to say his name, but I think we know him as Vosh, and this character, his father's a well-connected Hollywood person. He's from Beverly Hills. And he right now is just a cheerleader for the Azov battalion and the far right extremist forces in Ukraine. He's gone all the way in to he wants this war to keep going. He wants Russians to die. He wants a big war between the United States and Russia. And he's made that clear. And again, if you watch his streams, what's kind of amusing is that he's not very familiar with left-wing politics at all. He is handed lists of quotations, from Lenin, from Marx, and he'll read them off as if that means you should vote for Joe Biden. And it's really kind of pathetic to watch. But one thing that I find to be interesting about,
see, this to me is the left-wing equivalent to Tulsi Gabbard must be working for the Russians because what Tulsi Gabbard says benefits the Russians. So she must be directly and consciously working for the Russians. No, you're taught all intelligence, whatever, you're taught to exploit situations, people, and data. So this is just exploitation. And again, I don't mean exploitation with the negative connotations. What I mean is taking a circumstance and using your mind and your words to bend that circumstance to serve your principal objective. Okay? So for example, if my principal objective is to empower the government to spy on Americans, then what I'm going to do, I can't just come out and do that with things being normal as they are, but eventually something's going to happen. Holy shit, 2 planes just hit the Twin Towers. You want us to be able to figure that out, don't you? You want to avoid another 9/11, don't you? Yeah, you do. Here's the USA Patriot Act. Now, the real issue is, well, this didn't come about because we missed a phone conversation. This came about because you had different agencies not talking to each other, etc., not taking things as seriously as they should have, criminally negligent to a degree that fostered its own kind of legacy of conspiracy theories that our government couldn't be this incompetent, so they knew it was going to happen. They planned 9/11, loose change, yada, yada, yada. But the point is, I don't believe that the government directly caused 9/11 with remote control airplanes. They took a bad situation and exploited it in much the same way that I don't believe that our government purposely outbroke COVID. But when they did, they exploited it so as to get more power and transfer a bunch of wealth to already very, very wealthy people. So in this situation, Vosh, Destiny, all these people, bro, I get it. I'm with you. I keep belaboring this point, but all this tells me is that our government is exploiting these folks. It does not tell me that these people are consciously working for them. And I think we've got to be very careful when we're accusing people of being government shills. As I say all the time, it is easy to believe something bad about somebody we dislike and something good about someone we love, right? It's easy to believe something bad about somebody we hate and good about something we love. Now, I don't know Vosh, Destiny, any of these people. So I don't love or hate them. But it seems to me that this Maupin guy has an axe to grind with them. Obviously, Jimmy's been hurt by the system itself. I just think there's no proof. And we're 10, 11 minutes into this video. I don't think he's gonna show proof. What he's saying is this directly benefits the government, so that means you must be directly working for the government. That's a non sequitur. It doesn't follow. I'm just gonna say no, that's not what's happening. The government is exploiting it. That's my view. Okay. We continue.
All of this, you talk about the importance of people coming together. Mumia Abu-Jamal, that was an important cause in the 90s. This was a black liberation fighter who was facing the death penalty. And the reason that Mumia Abu-Jamal is still alive, he didn't get the death penalty, he's still in prison.
I remember the free Mumia protests in New York City. Unbelievable stuff. Unbelievable.
The reason that the state of Pennsylvania couldn't execute this former Black Panther was because a lot of people of different political views came together to stand against his execution. You had the far left, communists, anarchists, others. You also had Black nationalists, people with the Nation of Islam, Minister Farrakhan. You also had
shout out to Mr. Farrakhan.
Priests and nuns. The Pope stood against the execution of Mumia. You had Mennonites and Amish people. And in 1995, it was hundreds of thousands of people piled into Philadelphia with one demand: don't execute Mumia Abu-Jamal. And that's why Mumia, this black revolutionary journalist, wasn't executed, because people came together, overcame their differences. But nowadays, it seems like instead of doing that, we're supposed to engage in this kind of politics where the left talks to their crowd and riles them up and tries to purify them of any deviant thoughts within their own ranks. The right talks to their own crowd and does this, and everyone gets poorer, and the country polarizes politically, and austerity and war march ahead. And this is a setup for disaster. This isn't how serious political organizing works.
I couldn't agree with you more, and that is the biggest threat to them, is the populist left, populist right, realizing we have a common enemy, realizing that we can organize together against the establishment, against the oligarchy, to stop war, to stop police brutality, to stop racism. We could do. There's a lot of things to help. Also, to help our economy and get a living wage for people. That's the last thing they want. They're now happy that gas prices are so high, so people will be forced to go back to poor-paying jobs. That's the.
Did you guys hear that? It was like an Applebee's or something. They're like, these people can't afford gas, so we can put the wages back down now because their unemployment's running out. All the rest of it. Horrible people. Horrible people. We continue.
That's the world we're living in. And you're telling me that those people, those pretend. So it seems to me that the BreadTube, or the people who say they're progressives or lefties on YouTube, but they're actually just shills for the Democratic Party. That's what I've noticed when I've looked a little into it. It's every time they're like, well, you have to vote for Joe Biden. You have to vote for Hillary Clinton. You have to vote for the squad. You have to vote for Democrats. And Democrats are better than Republicans. And they come up with crazy reasons why the Democrats are better than the Republicans. Meanwhile, more and more people fall into poverty. More and more people go bankrupt. More and more people can't get health care. And we have more and more billions and trillions of dollars for imperialism and wars, while they keep telling you to keep voting for them. I mean, and everybody does that, from Kyle Kalinske to Crystal Ball to, right? I mean, of course, the Young Turks. Would you consider those people BreadTube? Because it seems like they're doing the same thing, telling everybody to keep voting Democrat. And that's so you can go off and have your Marxist theories, and you can criticize Democrats, but you have to, at the end of the day, vote for them. And you can't ever entertain a third party. That's what I see that comes out of BreadTube. Would you consider that?
Sure.
I don't think Crystal Ball could successfully be characterized as a BreadTuber. I mean, I remember after the last Biden, when it was clear that Biden was going to be the nominee, she said, I'm not sure if I'm going to vote for Biden. And Jen was like, well, what are you telling me? No. You have to vote for Biden. You have to. Trump is crazy. Yada, yada, yada. You have to vote for Biden. But she's been extremely critical of the Biden administration. My only thing about Crystal is that she doesn't provide an alternative. She hasn't come out and said, we've got to stop playing this duopolistic, bullshit game because they're the same person. It's the same party. She doesn't do that. She's very critical of Biden, as I knew she would be. But my only thing about Crystal is she doesn't come out and say, this is a plan. Now, part of the reason I think that she doesn't come out and do that is because we have no plan. And again, I'm extremely unsophisticated in this stuff and the third party and all the rest of it. I completely get it. But there's no plan, guys. Like, right now, what is Crystal supposed to do? She's supposed to say, don't vote for Joe Biden. What was the plan? Okay, we don't vote for Joe Biden. We get Trump. Now, I wouldn't care if we got Trump or Biden. They're the same thing to me. But it's clear when Bernie stepped down and he quit on us, and I think that that's when AOC turned as well. It's clear that the left, the real left, the real populists, whatever you want to call it, it's clear that we had no plan other than Bernie Sanders. That's obvious. And so I don't watch enough Kyle Kalinske to call him that, but definitely TYT is definitely blue no matter who. Republicans are evil, yada, 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 yada. But even beyond that, there's no plan. There's no leader. Nobody has emerged. AOC hasn't emerged as a sort of, and I think it's a really big ask to ask a young lady in her 20s, or maybe she hit 30, I'm not sure, to blow up her entire political establishment and say, we're on me, everybody on me. We're going to blow up the Democratic Party and create a third party. I think that's ridiculous. My point is, I don't know what Jimmy wants Crystal or anybody to do. So I don't know. And I don't care how many third or ninth or eighth or 12th parties. The issue is, where is the plan? Where is the plan, guys? Right, Jimmy? So that's where I'm at with the situation. Not saying you're wrong, but what proof are you seeking? Well, I would like a whistleblower. I'd like a whistleblower. I'd like a leaked email somewhere that's. I would even like. I would take a leaked email that says, we need to contact Vosh and yada 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 yada. There's nothing. There's just him speculating that these people are working with government actors, and I think that is a serious accusation. And And I think if you're going to write a whole book about it and go on a show that has 1 million subscribers, that you ought to have some proof of it. We have no proof of it. I don't think we're going to get proof of it. All this proves is that these BreadTubers are playing right into the government's hands, but that means that the government has waged a successful psyop against a very, very specific demographic of people, and to a degree, you have to tip your hat to them.
It's the same script. They're reading from the same script. There's no question about it. I think BreadTube is more specifically aimed at teenagers, people in their early 20s.
Okay.
And it's got more of a grunge vibe. You know, it's people sitting in their basements streaming. It's documentaries and things that are more alternative looking. It's got that more punk rock alternative aesthetic, but it's the same script that Young Turks is using.
Oh
no! Same script that Kyle Kulinski is using. Same narrative. What I find interesting is,
I just disagree. I look again. I don't watch enough Kyle Kulinski. But you guys know I'm a stickler for details. Kyle Kulinski is a different flavor to me than the Young Turks, than Crystal Ball. They're just not the same. Now, is he a blue no matter who guy? Probably. But again, being blue no matter who to me is a fear mechanism and the mentality of a psychologically beaten person. That's not an indicator to me of any sort of nefarious, whatever.
Again, they've gone after you because, oh my gosh, you interviewed a Bugaloo boy, right? But none of this cancel culture ever applies to Joe Biden. You ain't black, author of the crime bill. You just have to vote for him because
he built the cages those kids are in. He's the one who made it so you can't get rid of your medical debt or your student debt and bankrupt you. He made it. He's been the screwer of the American people. He's been why are most of our prisons filled up with black and brown people? Because of Joe Biden.
Correct.
So they'll never cancel him, but they'll try to cancel me when I speak about Joe Biden in an honest way and tell people to stop voting for him.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. I gotta say, guys, when I talk about being brainwashed and propagandized and psyoped by the government, I'm sorry. But if you, and people are going to get offended, but it's true. If you were pearl clutching about Donald Trump for 4 years because he said crazy shit on Twitter, he treated women horribly, yada, yada, yada. He was a quote racist. He told homegirl to go to Somalia, fix her country and come back. I understand how people feel uncomfortable about the way that he treated those people. But then Joe Biden can go on a show in a black space and tell a black man to his face, you don't vote for me, you're not black. Not even you don't vote for me, but if you have a question about voting for me, you ain't black, and you let that go. He wrote the crime bill completely unrepentant. You let that go. There was a credible accusation of him sexually assaulting one of his workers. And during the time of the Kavanaugh trial, you were all about it. Remember that? Credibly accused. But we've got oodles and oodles of videos of Joe Biden being completely inappropriate with underage girls. And you overlooked all of that and heartily voted for Donald Trump. People were telling me, bro, Donald Trump's a racist. I don't understand this. And I said, listen, Joe Biden has drafted and worked to pass legislation that did actual harm to my people. What he says to Ilhan Omar on Twitter cannot be compared to actual legislation that he's passed that has been destructive. I cannot tell you how many people were so, in my mind, completely irrational. It was like there was a blinder on about Joe Biden's racism, and it continues. When that Mexican fella said, you and Trump, you and Obama was nicknamed the deporter in chief. You were the vice president when that was going on. What are you going to do to amend that? Or what do you have to say about that? Biden looked that Mexican fella right in the face and said, go vote for Trump. You guys completely overlooked that. So I want to gently put back on the table, is it possible that you, dear listener, have been brainwashed by this psyop and have now become an agent of government operatives when you're able to just overlook all of that, but you were completely worked up emotionally about less things for Trump than you were about actual things for Biden? Is it possible? Is it possible that you yourself had been successfully psyoped by our government? How else can you explain it? How else can you explain it? Now here's Rig, and these are conversations I had all the time. Look, here he goes. Rig says, ironically, the crime bill had a ton of black support when it was first enacted. No, the crime bill was supported by certain black figureheads, like folks in the NAACP, et cetera, the same folks who got Joe Biden nominated over Bernie Sanders in the Carolinas. Right? Those people did not speak for us. The people that were speaking for us during the time of the crime bill were folks like Ice Cube, NWA, fuck the police, et cetera. That was the street level feeling of black people. He did not have overwhelming support from a lot of black people, Rig. He had the support of black figureheads, Rig. This is my point. But once again, even now, you're still using a government-friendly talking point to try to overshadow Biden's obvious racism and destructive effect that he has had on my community, simultaneous to saying that Trump was the biggest racist on the planet when he has done nothing even close to being that destructive to my community. As a matter of fact, he passed the First Step Act, which was a direct walking back of the Biden plan. These are the things that I'm talking about. This is what I'm talking about right here. Okay? So I'm just saying that I is it possible that maybe the BreadTubers who have been successfully brainwashed by our psychological operations apparatus in America, that you, dear listener, have fallen victim to it as well? Because how else can you explain your overlooking of You Ain't Black, his horrible treatment of Mexican folks, his telling the Mexican guy, go vote for Trump, wouldn't give him the dignity of answering the question, calling the woman the dog-faced pony soldier, whatever, the credible sexual assault, literally the corruption in Ukraine with his son. Literally every major accusation, racism, xenophobia, hatred of women, assault of women, grabbing by the, literally everything that we said we hated Trump for, Biden actually did with unequivocal proof. And you overlooked all of that and literally thought that he was a better alternative to Donald Trump. How? Is it possible, dear listener, that you were psyoped and that you're still being psyoped? Is it possible? I'm just putting it out. I'm just asking the question. We continue.
And the crazy thing is, there's the narrative that they have is so shallow. It's basically there's this group of bad people called fascists, and they're under every rock, and they're hiding behind every tree. Yes. Every Trump supporter is a Nazi. Yes. Every conservative is a Nazi. And they're not even understanding that fascism, there is a scientific Marxist.
Yeah, and that is also true. Everyone who supports Trump is a Nazi. Now we've got the ability to look backwards and say that is ridiculous. But it's true. A lot of you guys, and there's a guy right in this room, I'm not going to mention his name, but you guys got to the point where conservative equaled Nazi. You did. People were saying Trump is literally Hitler. And I was saying, whoa, no. Trump is not literally Hitler. Whoa, no. People who, look, I'm an open borders guy. I'm probably more liberal about the border than anybody else on this in our panel. And that's because I'm a Christian. I believe the Bible. in the Bible were open borders. But guys, what he's saying here is absolutely true. People were saying Trump was a Hitler, Trump was a Nazi, and obviously if Trump is literally Hitler, anyone that votes for him is what now? A Nazi. That did happen. And again, don't you find it odd that you were willing to castigate your neighbors that you go to work with, that you go to church with, that you go to school with, that you go to the playground with? You were so willing. We were so willing to castigate our neighbors as Nazis. And now, when we're actually supporting true Nazis, when we're actually supporting descendants of people that literally machined gun Jews to death in the town square, that's okay. You got to break a few eggs to make an omelet. Like, don't you find that weird? Like, they got you all emotionally crazy and angry at your, quote, Nazi neighbor, but you're completely fine with sending billions of dollars in weapons to fund actual Nazis who torture people to death on camera. What do you think accounts for that inconsistency and cognitive dissonance? I think we've been psyoped. I think we've been psyoped is what I think has happened. I think these people use social media and other forms of media, and they're able to basically drag us all around by the hair and have us believing on one hand that our neighbor is an irredeemable, terrible Nazi, but then on the other hand, actual Nazis are actually virtuous, good people with a minor character flaw. That's the power of psychological manipulation. And I think I disagree with the main thesis of this show, but I do think it's something that we need to look at, because we love saying other people are brainwashed, but if you were brainwashed, if you were psyoped by your government, what would it look like? It's like somebody says, like, if somebody says you're in a cult, you're probably 90% likely that you're in a cult. C.I.A. has come to the horrific conclusion that she was part of a cult for a very long time in a school. How do you know? If you don't ask yourselves these questions, how can we know if we're not being brainwashed? That's important to know.
Understanding of it. Read R. Palm Dutt. Read Georgy Dimitrov, right? There is an understanding of where fascism comes from, and it flows from the breakdown of capitalism. It's a system, when you have the capitalist system with profits in command, you inevitably have economic breakdowns, and, great leaps in technology lead to greater poverty. And as there's greater poverty in society,
Whoa, I got to read this. My husband and kids lost an entire generation in the Holocaust, and we are not psyops, and they are offended. I got to bring that back, because that was really, really powerful. There it is. My husband and kids lost an entire generation in the Holocaust, and we are not psyops, and they are offended by this whole Putler psyop that libs are eating up. Yeah. I mean, Sam Mack, 100%. 100%. They were just throwing that term around loosely. And you can watch the old Middle America guys, like, guys, whoa, no, Nazi words mean something. Nazi means something. But now that Trump is out of office, now the term Nazi means something different now. Very interesting stuff. We continue.
Of the ruling class wants to lock down society, drive wages down, and reduce living standards, and degrow, which is another big BreadTube theme, degrowth. They want to degrow in order to try and stabilize the capitalist economy. There's a scientific Marxist understanding of what fascism actually is, but in their minds, fascism is a question of good people versus bad people.
Right.
And if we just drive these bad people out, then everything will be fine. Well, no, it's not a question of good people versus bad people. It's a problem rooted in the system, the fundamental flaws of the capitalist system.
So they
Right. And his point is, yeah, everybody's a fascist. Everybody who votes for Trump is a fascist, yada, yada, yada. Yeah, guys, these terms mean something. They have historical, sociological, and scientific roots to them, which is why these words mean something, right? So you can't just throw out all these terms every single. That's why I don't run around calling myself a Marxist. Now look, the right does this all the time. They're like, oh, this guy's a Marxist. This is a Marxist. Oh, CRT, Marxism. M Death Fan, you're in the thing. Don't pretend like the right doesn't do this. The right does this all the time. The right does this they trot out the term Marxism for any and everything that they don't like. Okay, so we're talking about the left right now, but let's not get this twisted. It's our government. And I'm not doing well, what about the right wing? My point is there is no left or right wing when it comes to the government. There are just different flavors of the same type of operation. So if you're on the left wing, then Russia's the big bad guy. So you're a Russian shill, yada, yada, yada. If you're on the right wing, then Marx is the big boogeyman. So you're a Marxist. And if you're a progressive, like, this ecosystem, whatever, then the government is the big bad guy. You're working for the government. So all of these folks do it, is my point. All of them do that stuff. Okay? So my point is, let's try to learn from these situations and say, maybe I have repeated. It's almost impossible that you have not repeated some government or prepackaged talking. It's impossible that you haven't. Right? So let's just look at this let's just try to be as objective as we possibly can about this and look at ourselves, deeply. All right, we continue.
I think that people they'll say Donald Trump and Ted Cruz are fascists, but guys like Joe Biden, Kamala Harris are good people. As if they don't serve the exact same people and have almost the exact same agenda.
Yeah.
Except with tweaks on the margins. I mean,
sure. Well,
they're all.
You have to understand.
Go ahead.
Trump says naughty words. He said naughty words, and it's all about words with these people. It's all about words. It's all about aesthetics. It's all about imagery. Nothing about concrete, actual analysis. Joe Biden can set up the crime bill. Joe Biden can be driving the wages of workers down. None of that matters. It's all just this question of aesthetics, and they're triggered by what they think of as authoritarianism, right? If anything reeks of, a strong government getting things done, it scares them, whether it's coming from the right or the left. And again, go back to the Congress for Cultural Freedom and Susan Sontag and her redefinition of fascism, where fascism becomes groups of people working together for a common aim when they're trying to equate the Soviet Union with Nazi Germany. There's a long precedent for these kind of distortions of left-wing politics, and BreadTube is a continuation of that, I maintain.
Now, here's Adam. I've called the Canadian truckers neo-Nazis, and Vin calls me a biased bigot for that. Does that make me brainwashed? No, Adam, and you can screenshot everybody where I called you a biased bigot. I actually called you a biased bigot because somebody had talked about the supposed Nazis at the trucker rally, and you said they posted a video of a person giving testimony of what they saw, and you said, do you think that Vin's going to listen to some unemployed bum on the street and take what he has to say as some sort of gospel? And that's when I said, yes, I will, because I don't care that he's unemployed or a quote bum on the street. What he says is just as valuable to me as somebody in mainstream media. That's what I called you a bigot for, because that's a classist statement to make. That was during the Jordan Peterson review for anybody that's... So, no, I didn't call you a bigot because you said that there were Nazis at the trucker rally. I called you a bigot for dismissing a person's visual testimony because they're not in the same class as you, and you dismiss them because they were poor. And I've screenshotted that. I'm not going to embarrass you and show the actual words that you used, but that's why I called you a bigot. But we're all works in progress, and I mean that sincerely. Okay? I've had a long journey with my LGBT siblings, and bless God, I've got some very patient LGBT folks who are willing to overlook a bunch of shit. from me over the years so that I could get closer and closer and closer to being a more whole person. And I would commend that to you, Brother Keene. Just because the man was homeless does not mean that his opinion wasn't valuable, especially to somebody like me. Because I used to be homeless, Adam. We continue.
Well, and again, I don't. So the reason why I'm not aware of who BreadTube is because I'm not in the demo that they're going after, right? Because they're going after younger people,
Sure.
And are they mostly on Twitch or YouTube or both?
Twitch, YouTube, they're all across social media platforms. They're very widely promoted.
What about that Hassan Piker? So when I see that Hassan Piker, Cenk Uyghur's nephew,
Sure.
super talent, he had an article, a positive article written about him in like the Business Insider or some magazine like that. I don't know which one it was. But the reason I know this is because every time I logged into Twitter for a week straight, it was promoting that article. How does that happen?
Exactly. And if you look at how BreadTube started on Reddit, it was largely there was a lot of money being handed out.
Again, now we got to throw Hassan in there. Again, to me, this is the same thing as the Russiagate stuff or red baiting people. Now you're just government baiting people. You're blue. I call this blue baiting, I guess. Now Hassan Piker's in it, Crystal Ball's in it, yada, yada. All these people are working for the CIA. Sorry, I don't believe it. I think Rig is right here. There's a lot of what about this, what about this, what about this, but there's no real substance to the accusation. This is, but we continue. And look, I believe anybody and everybody. I think Jimmy's the best in the space, but I think anybody and everybody who's got a large, sizable following on YouTube, is talented. Hassan is in the 1% category of folks on YouTube. I don't care what anybody says. I do this for a living. Anybody that can do that is a hard worker and very, very, very talented. So shout out to all those people. I think Jimmy's the best, but they're all talented. But we continue.
Out in order to encourage people to debunk the ideas of the right wing, right? The right wing was gaining on the internet. There were a lot of right wing YouTube channels, etc. And a lot of money started showing up in people's Patreons, and a lot of algorithmic support was being provided for people to debunk the right wing. And that's good. I mean, there's a lot of crazy stuff on the right wing, conspiracy theories.
And all of us in the community know how to, especially when you get these consultations and stuff, when Google issues you a consultant. Once you hit a certain amount of subscribers, they'll consult with you, yada, yada, yada. And the algorithm itself is a kind of a top secret thing. But in every little niche that you're in, you know, because YouTube communicates with you, you know how to get yourself, you know what they want. Let's say it that way. People are, I was talking to a guy and saying, you're doing this for clicks, yada, yada, yada. I'm like, no, if I was doing this for clicks, I would be running an anti-Putin video every 2 seconds, because those are the videos that YouTube wants up there because they're in, etc. But we continue.
And notions that we should privatize everything and roll back all government regulation. So it's not inherently bad. But at the end of the day, they're also targeting people on the left, like you, like me, who dare actually challenge the system. And they're trying to cultivate the left to just be foot soldiers for some of the most powerful capitalists out there.
For the Democratic Party.
Yeah, Jeff Bezos, the Walton family,
Bill Gates.
at Walmart. Yeah, I mean, that's who they...
I don't think Hassan Piker wants to do that. Crystal Ball, she has been... Actually, Kyle Kalinske and Crystal Ball have actually been on the forefront of going after Amazon.com and going after the biggest capitalist with a capital C in the world with Jeff Bezos. Kalinske and Crystal just had a show with a guy that's standing up unions and all the rest of it that took on Amazon. Like the thesis is not working for me at all, and I'm not really. I disagree with a lot of what maybe Crystal does and all the rest of it, but I'm not a fan of this. I don't I don't know a lot about Hassan, but I'm pretty sure that he's not friendly to hyper-capitalists either. I don't know why do we have to go this far with it? Say that they want this to happen and all the rest of it. It's enough to say that they're being exploited by those elements. And again, I don't, like I said, Kalinsky is the only one that's had, I forgot the guy's last name, it's Chris something. He was the guy that got fired from Amazon because he dared to tell people that about the COVID situation during that time. They fired him, and then he went to sue the yada yada. Like, Kalinsky is still talking to this guy. Like, when he was a big flash in the pan story last year and then he died, Kalinsky's still talking about him. I just saw a Rising episode where they featured him. Jimmy's not talking about that right now. This guy, I don't know if he's still talking about this. So to say that these people are working for the capitalist elements and they're self-consciously doing that, like, it's so easily disproven. Why would you say that? Now Jimmy's been hurt by these people in question. I understand that on Jimmy's part, but on this guy's part, I don't really understand what the axe to grind is here.
Ultimately want leftism to serve. And no, I mean, the goal is to get a society where the banks and the factories and the industries and the centers of economic power are organized to serve public good and not the profits of a few, a rationally organized economy. That's the goal. The goal is to... Tyler,
number one, thank you. That actually does mean a lot to me. I'm not saying, I don't know enough about this Maupin fellow to say he does good or bad reporting. You said he has the receipts. Like, I'm not trying to be combative, but can you just get me to the receipts? Can you show me where the receipts are? I'm 19.33 and I've only got 6 minutes left of this video, and he hasn't shown anything actually definitive. So if you could get me the actual receipts, I would genuinely appreciate that, my man. Read his article. His interview happened because he wrote it. Does he have anything in the article that shows a leaked email, a phone call transcript, something where these people are actively working for elements in the CIA, NSA, DSA, whatever? If you have that, then great. We continue.
Overturn this system of imperialism and build a society where the needs of people come first. And you're not going to solve that with worker cooperative schemes, and you're not going to solve that by voting for Joe Biden. Ultimately, it's a question of getting working people to realize their own economic interests. And they have a word for that, right? If you want to raise the minimum wage or if you want Medicare for all, you're a class reductionist.
No, saying a person lives from their RV, so what they have to say is not believable, I think is what Sister's talking about, Adam, when she calls you classist. Because the fact that he's homeless or living in his RV has nothing to do with the value of what he has to say. The value of what he has to say is actually rooted in his inherent value as a person. But you made it about his class. So I don't care who you were referring to. You made a classist statement, and in my mind, there's no difference between classist, racist, sexist, etc., etc., etc. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying you need to grow in that area, just like I need to grow in the area of LGBT, yada, yada, yada. We all have areas where you need to grow. And so Sister's actually doing you a favor. The scripture says an enemy multiplies kisses. The wounds of a friend can be trusted, but an enemy multiplies kisses. You have people that are telling you, hey man, this is a part of your being that you need to grow out of. You're a very young man. I'm sure you don't believe that you're a finished product yet. What you said was classist, and from the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. You're a classist person. You look down on people that live from their RVs. You don't think that they're as valuable as you, because you apparently don't. All you have to do is acknowledge it and work on it. We're all a work in progress, including your brother. We continue.
Their term.
What?
Immediately they scream class reduction.
What does that mean?
I don't know what it means, but if you want to fight for economic justice, you're a bad person. You're a class reductionist, and they have all kinds of lists of
I've never heard Crystal Ball say that.
Names they throw at people, and one of them is if you believe in economic justice, if you raise economic issues, you don't focus on the culture war. You're a class reductionist.
That is such. That's well. What I enjoy telling people is that when you hear people who say they're on the left in the
Yeah, but I don't hear people saying that though. I don't hear Crystal or Kyle. Again, granted, I don't listen to a lot of Kyle. I listen to a lot of Crystal and Sagar. I don't hear them using that terminology. And I don't. I'm going to admit to you guys, I don't listen to a lot of TYT either. To be honest with you, I tried I tried last night. It's playing Fortnite. They got the they got an RPG thing now that it's kind of like a mortar thing that takes care of the tanks. So that was great. And there's no building, which is also fun. Amy Lee never plays with me anymore, but that's okay. So I was listening to a lot of, I try to listen to everybody, Tucker, Jimmy. I'm trying to listen to everybody. Had a hard time with TYT. I'm not going to lie. I struggle listening to them. I will try to listen to more of this Vosh guy and all the rest of it. But either way, I don't hear any of them saying what this guy says that he says.
United States, and they say things like, we have to organize along class lines, right? We have to organize. You'll even hear the knuckleheads at TYT say this thing. We have to organize along class lines. They have no idea what that means. And if they do, they're just blatantly lying because they do not mean what organizing along class lines means is that you organized with people in the same class, meaning whatever political stripe they come from, meaning if they're a libertarian or a socialist or a Republican or a boogaloo boy or a socialist or a communist, all those people have to come together. That's called, so it's just like when you organize in a union. I've been in unions my whole life. The way you don't organize a union is you don't go to the shop floor and go, who here's a boogaloo boy? You're out. Who here's a Proud Boy? You're out. Who's here as a libertarian gun nut? You're out. Who here's a Trump voter? You're out. Okay, who's left? Now we're going to organize against the man with you people. That's not how organizing works. It's only powerful when you get people who totally disagree with each other to agree.
Oh, yeah. Shout out to the Vanguard. Shout out to the Vanguard. I like those guys.
On something, and that's when change really happens. Like when we had the Medicare for All march this summer, people were complaining that there's some right-wingers on stage. That's because Medicare for All means Medicare for all, and that's when you can actually pressure government, when you have people from all different stripes of politics combined and converging on one idea. That's how you make something happen, which is why
100%.
The Black Panthers teamed up with the KKK in Las Vegas to get their welfare checks back.
I brought this up earlier.
That's why they killed Fred Hampton. Why did they kill Fred Hampton? Because he was organizing black people? No, because Fred Hampton was organizing Southern racist whites with black people in Chicago, and they were realizing they had more in common than they had separate and different, and that's when they killed Fred Hampton.
Tell them.
That's the thing that they can't have, and that's what people who say we have to organize.
It's true. It's true. They worked with white power, Confederate flag waving, crazy ass racists over there. And they worked together. They came to some compromises because they understood who the common enemy was. And wouldn't you know it, toward the end of their co-belligerency together, the racists said, I'm not really with this KKK Confederate shit anymore. These black folks are actually cool. And you're stomping the shit out of them the way you stomped the shit out of us when we tried to unionize. I'm not going to say that the race issue doesn't exist in America. It's only a class issue. No, that's not true because our government has implemented policies such that when you have people in the same class, for example, redlining, I don't need to talk about that. Here's my point. My point is because Fred Hampton had the maturity and the wisdom to overlook this superficial difference and paradigm, to overlook that and still extend his hand and say, I will still work with you. And no, and yes, there were some compromises that had to be made, right? There were some compromises that were made between the two of them. But as they got to know each other and as they got to fight the same enemy, these people decided, man, this KKK shit is for the birds. Which is exactly what I talked about with the Kyle Rittenhouse situation, where there was an obvious missed opportunity. Because Rittenhouse got to see what it's like when the justice system is unfairly targeting you. And he probably ran in a couple people of color and said, holy shit, if I was one of you guys, I would be screwed. And instead of working with him, we said all types of reckless, crazy shit about this boy on Twitter. Instead of being like Fred Hampton and looking past the aesthetics, instead of working with him, we missed a giant opportunity for prison reform and criminal justice reform in this country. That kid, we could have exploited the hell out of that situation, and we didn't. Because I'm talking specifically the black community. We're emotional, we're immature, and our leaders are 100,000% corrupt and not forward thinking. Brother Minister Farrakhan accepted, but he's in the twilight now, and he's about to transition out of this mortal plane, as it were. But what Jimmy says here is absolute gold. And I wish this is the only thing that they said on this, because we don't have to go further and accuse people who, in my opinion, I'm not talking about TYT, but Crystal Ball, Kyle Kalinske, these are people, in my opinion, who are doing their best to try to create a better America. So please think a little, that's where I'm at with it. A little bit more, guys. I'll land the plane. Here we go.
On class lines, when you hear somebody at the Young Turks that we have to organize, they don't mean it for a second. They hate people who are in the different political party than they are and in the same class. They hate those people. And in fact, their business model is built on clickbait, hating those people. So would you like to comment on that?
Well, sure. And, the biggest cure in U.S. history for racism has always been the picket line. When black workers and white workers see they have a common economic interest, this breaks down the divisions. It was the C.I.A. and in their effort to spread unions, it was that broke down the racial divisions. When the Communist Party in the 1930s was going into the auto plants and the steel mills, often they would break down historical divisions among workers and build multiracial unions. You hear
that could have been done at TYT, except TYT TYT are union busters. So we know that that's not the case. What's the guy's name? Paul Robeson. Paul Robeson is another black guy. Paul Robeson, black guy, suffered horribly in this country for obvious reasons, went overseas to the UK, hooked up with a bunch of Marxists, all the rest of it. Paul Robeson, black dude, during the Red Scare, came back, had to testify at the floor of the Senate. They were trying to red bait him, and he gave them white folks a business. But he said he felt more welcome by the whites overseas. The workers, he kept talking about the workers. Paul Robeson was an artist. He's made a lot of money, but he was talking about the workers, and he said that was his calling, and he fell in love with those people, and those people fell in love with him, and they wouldn't stop hugging him, kissing him, and all the rest of it, and he was out there grinding for those people. So he went back to America with some Marxist principles, and then they tried to red bait him and red scare him and all the rest of it. My point, dear listener, is when people get together, do we have other conflicts? Yes, there's a guy right now. I'm in the chat. His name is it's DJ. One of my best friends, like in real life and on the channel. I love this dude. If he were to call me up and say, "Yo, Vin, I need you to come here, and here. I need to do X, Y," I would do it for him. I genuinely love the dude. Right? He's a far right guy. In my opinion, he's got some issues that me and him have, and I've explicitly told him and yada yada yada. But there are some real core principles of fairness, things of that nature that we agree on and we work together on, and we fight like cats and dogs probably once a week. It's a ritualistic thing. I say things to him I would never say to a lot of you out here, but that's because I know he can take it and vice versa. But I love the guy. I love him because we're both guys in our 30s with a bunch of kids just trying to make it, trying to do whatever. And we're both seeing the same thing as far as what our government is doing, left wing or right wing. And having shows where you just only demonize anybody who disagrees with you, even newsflash, racism or classism is not the unpardonable sin. It's, if you're a little bit racist, it's okay. You're a work in progress. You're growing. Why do people have to be completely perfect? Let me ask you a question. I initially asked this question to some of my pro-life friends because they're like, you can't. Some of these people won't even work with Catholics in the cause of pro-life because the Catholic's doctrine it's insane. I said, listen, bruh, if there is a building on fire and you have the hose and I have a fire extinguisher, are you going to ask me a doctrinal statement before me and you go into that building to rescue the little baby that's up there? No. Let's go put out the fire, save the baby, and then after we can have the doctor. It's the same thing with our government, right? Like, I don't need to know that you're perfect on race, that you're perfect on LGBT, that you're perfect on XY. I don't need to know that. Here's what I need to know. We're in a bad healthcare situation. People are dying in our country every year needlessly because they don't have healthcare. How about we do something about that? Do you agree that Americans, and you love America, Mr. Right-wing person, you love the old red, white, and blue. Can you tolerate the fact that Americans are dying needlessly, simply so that insurance companies and big pharma, et cetera, can line their pockets to the tune of billions a year while we're burying our fellow Americans? The guy says, actually, nah, fuck that. I hate that. No, I don't like that at all. Okay, great. Do you like the fact that our veterans get screwed over? We send them all to these horrible regime change wars, et cetera, that are based on lies, and they come back home, and again, they don't have health care. What if we had a healthcare system that encompassed everybody? Yeah, I think that'd be great. Okay, then let's me and you work together and get that done. And maybe as you and I are working together, you'll say, black folk really ain't that bad after all. Or gay folk really ain't that bad after all. Or, I don't understand these trans people, but they're not monsters when we work together for a common goal. I don't need a purity test before. Maybe we have those discussions after we slay the dragon, after we save the baby, after we put out the fire, after we stop burying 28-year-olds. I'll have the discussion about you being a racist bastard after we stop burying 28-year-olds.
Out in the South, when the sharecroppers were organizing, how William Z. Foster and Gus Hall would go to a town and give a speech, and how the white workers would rip up their Ku Klux Klan cards and say, my enemy isn't the black people, my enemy is the plantation owners and the capitalists and the big bankers. That is how you overcome racism, is getting people to see they have something in common, bringing people together. It's through those kinds of struggles that you can break down inequality, and that people can see that they have more in common. And by creating artificial divisions ahead of time and discouraging economic struggle, you're setting the stage for the opposite. You're setting the stage for basically whipsawing the population. There's an old device they call the whipsaw, right? And it's like a two-man saw. And when one guy's pushing, the other guy's pulling. And when one guy's pulling, the other guy's pushing. That's kind of what they're doing right now in the United States. They want one section of the population to think that they can only gain at the expense of another section of the population. And then they go to the other section and say, oh, you can only gain at the expense of the other one. And you've got working people all throughout the United States pushing and pulling on each other in a culture war, and we're all getting poorer, and their agenda of creating a low-wage police state marches ahead. And we got to have class solidarity. We got to go against it. Fred Hampton is a great example of that kind of work.
Low-wage police state. That is exactly what they're pushing for. Well, anyway, great work on this. BreadTube Serves Imperialism, Examining the New Brand of Internet Pseudo-Socialism by Caleb Maupin. It's available at Amazon and all the places where you can buy books. Do you have a website?
Sure. I'm at calebmaupin.com, but you can also check out, I work with a think tank called the Center for Political Innovation. We're at cpiusa.org. We're trying to bring people together, try to formulate an economic program to rescue the United States from the crisis we're facing. cpiusa.org. It's the Center for Political Innovation.
Caleb Maupin's been our guest. Great work, and look forward to talking to you more. Thanks for coming on the show, and I apologize again for the delay. Thanks for being a good sport.
Sure thing.
Hey, we're doing our live stand-up tour.
All
we're going to be in Orlando.
Well,
we're going to be in Tampa, Columbus.
Delaney, your power went out because it was so inspiring. I was saying that music, I didn't plan that music. It just happened in the thingamajiggy. But holy shit, that happened like right at the right time, huh? Okay. All right, guys. There you go. It is what it is. Look, man, here's my final thoughts, okay? Here's my final thoughts on this. And thank you to Adam, to Rig, to DJ, to everybody that has or is participating. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it. Now, as far as the basic thesis of this video from my man Jimmy Dore was that the CIA, NSA, et cetera, are actively working on recruiting these folks, and these folks are actively agreeing. Vosh, Crystal Ball, TYT, all the rest of it. Although I did shoot a video about Cenk and his connection to the CIA, which is really fascinating. But that was because I had clips of Cenk from his own mouth. You guys can look that up, or in the post editing, I'll try to put the actual video up here, so it'll like flash over here. So there was a video where I shot, but again, that was Cenk's own mouth, and there was some proof there. I mean, they brought an agency guy on to the show, and then Cenk was reminiscing about back in the day, et cetera, okay? But the main thesis is these guys, Vosh, Crystal Ball, TYT, et cetera, they know, and they're actively and knowingly working for the CIA to spread government talking points. That's called BreadTube. And we listened to the entire discussion, and there was no definitive evidence that showed that was the case. I do believe that those folks are working for the government, with the exception of Crystal Ball, in the sense that they're consistently speaking government talking points, and they're completely in line with a government agenda. But I do not believe that Mr. Maupin presented his case in any sort of definitive way to where we could say, "Yep, that's what's going on. They're actively taking money from the CIA." I don't believe that that's the case. Furthermore, our government has explicitly done this. Just 2 weeks ago, they literally, in broad daylight at 3 p.m., had TikTokers and Jen Psaki and then Chris whoever from the National Security Council or whatever, telling these TikTokers what to say about misinformation, disinformation. They did that in broad daylight. So my thing is, even if they did something like that, I don't believe they need to hide that in any conspiratorial fashion, because they came out and explicitly did that. What is more likely happening, in my opinion, is that the government has successfully psychologically manipulated and operated on us to such a case that they have turned a very important demographic in a very important platform, that would be YouTube. So our demographic, 25 to 35-ish, okay, that they've turned those people successfully with the ecosystem that was created by 5 years of Russiagateism, 5 years of CNN and Rachel Maddow, and the inherent echo chamber that happens when you're a YouTuber and you're a big one, that those people have been successfully propagandized and brainwashed so that they're working for the government without being directly remunerated by the government because they've been successfully turned as agents. That's what I think is happening. And the point of what I'm saying about that is to say, it is always easy to see when another person is being brainwashed, but what about you, dear listener? Are there parts where you've ever been brainwashed by the government? And if you say you've never been brainwashed by the government, that almost guarantees that you have been. I was during 9/11. I wouldn't say I was doing COVID, but what I will say about COVID is that I only publicly spoke about things that were in line with the government narrative. I was having rigorous discussions and debates on the sideline, but I would never publicly talk about it. Publicly, I only talked about one aspect of the COVID situation until the New York Times article. And you'll notice that I still haven't done, and I still do this, by the way, the Russia torture stuff where the Ukrainians were torturing the Russian POWs, doing really horrific things to them. I saw that video a couple days ago. I didn't report on it because I didn't know if it was authentic and I didn't want to take part in Russian propaganda. But then when the New York Times reported on it, I was like, oh, okay. So my point is, the people who entertainment is powerful, media is powerful, saying the same thing over and over again until it becomes something that you can say in your sleep. All of that is powerful. And if you believe that your mind is impervious to brainwashing or impervious to socio-psychological manipulation or subtle manipulation, sleight of mind things, if you think that you're impervious to that, then you've missed the entire point of the 2 hours that we spent together. None of us are impervious to it. All of us have fallen for something with our government. So when you watch things like Jimmy Dore and things like this, even if we agree with the central thesis, even if we disagree with the central thesis of what they're saying, what we want to do is say, okay, where has it happened to me? And we want to look at ourselves in the mirror and say, hey, all of us are works in progress. How are we going to learn from this so that we don't do this again? That's the best that I've got, guys. Shout out to Lisa Fernandez. Lisa, I followed up on that thing you're doing and it's in process now. Thank you very freaking much. I appreciate it. So there you go. All right, guys, I got to get out of here because I was looking for my watch. I don't have a watch. I'm going to go get some orange juice, inshallah, play some Fortnite. And if you're a praying person, pray for my wife. Hopefully she can get back on her feet and we'll be good to go. All right, guys. In the meantime, love your neighbor, take care of each other. Middle America, we are the media. Till next time, guys.